Hello and welcome to Geology, a channel dedicated to making concepts in biology simple, easy to understand, and interesting. In today's video, we are going to discuss the questions and answers which are in chapters of the NCERT Class 10th textbooks. We are going to solve the questions together and I'm going to explain you the answers as well. The textbooks also have exercises which we will take up in another video, which will be a sequel to this one. Let's begin with in-chapter questions of Chapter 5, Life Processes. Why is diffusion insufficient to meet the oxygen requirement in multicellular organisms like us? I have written the answer here so you can read it at your own pace. For you to understand now, unicellular organisms have just one cell which is in contact with outside environment, and hence through diffusion, gaseous exchange and oxygen requirement is met. But in case of multicellular organisms, two main points that you have to remember while answering this question. One, they have complex body designs. That is, they have different organ systems and different body processes, because of which all cells cannot come in contact with the outside environment, and hence diffusion cannot satisfy their oxygen needs. What criteria would you use to determine if an object is alive? For this, in the very beginning of the chapter, we have mentioned that living organisms have certain processes, certain life processes. That's what we have to answer in this for this question. For example, growing, reproduction, movement, eating, all of these are indicators of life. What are outside raw materials used for by an organism? First, we need to understand what are the raw materials. Basically, oxygen, water, and food. These are the things that the body takes from outside, and then we are using them. So, food we use as a source of energy. Oxygen we take in because there are a lot of chemical reactions which happens within the body, which are used for various cellular needs for getting energy. And then water is important because it helps in transportation within the body. It also helps in digestion, and there are a lot of other biological reactions which happen within the body where water is required. Moving on to the next question. What processes would you consider essential for maintenance of life? So, the processes which an organism must do, even if it is not doing anything else, but still continues to do the processes, and without which life would become difficult, are the essential processes for maintenance of life, which includes nutrition, respiration, transportation, excretion, control and coordination, movement, response to stimuli, homeostasis, all of these. There is one more, which is reproduction. But in case of reproduction, at an individual organism level, reproduction is not an essential life process, because even if reproduction does not happen, life would still exist. But at a species level, reproduction is extremely important because that ensures the continuation of the species on Earth. If reproduction does not happen, then soon the species will become extinct. What is the difference between autotrophic nutrition and heterotrophic nutrition? Nutrition is of two types, autotrophic and heterotrophic. Auto means self, hetero means others, trophy means nutrition. So all those organisms which can make their own food using simple raw materials are the autotrophs, whereas heterotrophs are the ones which depend on others for their food. Autotrophs are generally the producers in the food chain, while heterotrophs are the consumers. Examples are of autotrophs are green plants and bacteria, autotrophic bacteria, and then most animals and fungi are the heterotrophs. Next, where does the plant get raw material needed for photosynthesis? So first, what do we need for photosynthesis? We need chlorophyll, we need carbon dioxide, and we need water. Chlorophyll is present in the chloroplast of the leaves. Carbon dioxide is taken up from the atmosphere, and water is absorbed from the soil by the roots. What is the role of acid in our stomach? So stomach produces hydrochloric acid. In stomach, we also have enzyme pepsin, and pepsin can function only in an acidic medium. Thus, the acid in the stomach makes the food acidic so that pepsin found in the digestive juice can digest the proteins. The second function of the acid is that it kills any bacteria which enters in the stomach along with the food. What is the function of digestive enzymes? Enzymes are basically biocatalysts. Just like in chemistry, we have seen catalysts speed up the reaction or they help the reaction to happen. Same way, enzymes like amylase, trypsin, pepsin, lipase, all of these act on complex food substances, for example, proteins, fats, etc. And they break them down into simple soluble components which can be easily absorbed by the body. How is the small intestine designed to absorb digested food? So the walls of the small intestine have finger-like projections called villi. We know that majority of the absorption happens inside the small intestine. So we need a huge space or a lot of space for absorption of the food that we take. But as such, we do not have such a big body. So we already have the small intestine which is coiled. To further increase the surface area inside the small intestine, the inner walls have got finger-like projections which are known as villi. So these villi increase the surface area for effective absorption of food. And from the villi, the food moves on to the bloodstream and then it gets delivered to different cells in the body. How is a terrestrial organism advantageous over an aquatic organism in obtaining oxygen for respiration? Um, all organisms take oxygen from the environment around them. We who are terrestrial organisms, we take in oxygen from the air, whereas the aquatic organisms take in oxygen from which is dissolved in the water. So the quantity of oxygen dissolved in water is generally less compared to the quantity of oxygen available in air. And thus terrestrial organisms get an easy and more access to oxygen for respiration as compared to aquatic animals. What are the different ways in which glucose is oxidized to provide energy in various organisms? Now, glucose is a 6-carbon molecule. The first part of the respiratory reaction happens in the cytoplasm, where glucose breaks down into 2 molecules of pyruvate, each of which is a 3-carbon molecule. During this reaction, a little amount of energy is also released. But further breakdown depends upon the availability of oxygen. In a normal scenario where there is enough oxygen, the further reaction happens inside mitochondria, and the glucose breaks down into pyruvate, and pyruvate breaks down into carbon dioxide, water, and energy. This is known as a complete breakdown of glucose, and maximum energy is produced from this reaction. The second scenario is in case of organisms like yeast, where there is no oxygen. or where they do not depend upon oxygen for respiration. So in case of yeast, the pyruvate breaks down into ethanol, carbon dioxide, and energy. Ethanol is a 2-carbon molecule. So you can see that it is not a complete breakdown because we still have a 2-carbon molecule which is left behind, and hence the energy that is generated is comparatively lesser. The third scenario happens in muscle cells or in cases where there is a lack of oxygen or oxygen is insufficient. You would have experienced when you are doing very severe exercises, you get a pain in the muscle. That is because of the formation of lactic acid, because in this case pyruvate breaks down into 3-carbon molecule lactic acid and a little amount of energy which is released. So these are the 3 different types of pathways which glucose takes for providing energy to various organisms. How is oxygen and carbon dioxide transported in humans? See, oxygen is not easily dissolvable in water. Hence, to carry oxygen to different parts of the body, there is a respiratory pigment called hemoglobin, which is found in the red blood cells. It combines with oxygen to form oxyhemoglobin and is carried from the lungs to different parts of the body. Whereas in case of carbon dioxide, it is soluble in water and it can be easily transported through the blood and is brought back to the lungs, and then it goes out of the body through the nostrils. How are lungs designed in human beings to maximize the area of exchange of gases? Now in the lungs, the bronchus divides and redivides into bronchioles, and at the end of which there are these balloon-like structures called alveoli. Alveoli have very thin walls and are lined by numerous blood vessels. So it is these alveoli, because of the presence of which there is a large surface area generated for the exchange of gases. The concept is very similar to how we have villi in intestine, which increases the surface area for absorption of food. Just like that, alveoli in lungs increase the surface area for exchange of gases. What are the components of transport system in humans and what are their functions? So mainly there are 3 main things which comprise the transport system in human beings: the heart, the blood, and the blood vessels. Heart is a muscular organ, helps to pump the blood. Blood itself is a fluid connective tissue. It is made up of plasma, red blood cells and white blood cells and platelets. Plasma transports food, carbon dioxide, nitrogen, excretory material, etc. Red blood cell helps in transport of oxygen, and white blood cell, it protects the body from infections. And then platelets are the ones which help in clotting of the blood at the site of a cut. Then the third component are the blood vessels, which are again of 3 types: arteries, veins and capillaries. Arteries carry oxygenated blood from the heart to different parts of the body. Veins carry deoxygenated blood from organs back to the heart. And then capillaries are the smallest vessels. They're very thin, and so exchange of materials between blood and the tissue happens through the capillaries. And they transport the nutrients, oxygen to cell, and so on. So generally, the arteries break down to arterioles, which break down into capillaries. Capillaries join together to form venules, and then veins. Why is it necessary to separate oxygenated and deoxygenated blood in mammals and birds? Now, both mammals and birds have 4-chambered heart where the oxygenated and deoxygenated blood do not come in contact with one another. So this separation helps in better efficient supply of oxygen to the body. It is also useful because these organisms have high energy needs. So pure blood gives more energy compared to a blood mixed with carbon dioxide. And then thirdly, these organisms also require energy to maintain their body temperature, which they obtain from the oxygenated blood. What are the components of transport system in highly organized plants? Transport system in higher plants comprise of xylem and phloem. Both are complex tissues. Xylem contains xylem vessels, tracheids, xylem parenchyma, and xylem fibers. And its main function is to transport water and minerals from the roots to the rest of the plants. So the direction is upwards. Phloem, on the other hand, um contains sieve tubes, companion cells, phloem parenchyma, and phloem fibers. The function of phloem is to transfer food from other parts, um, transfers food from the leaves to the other parts of the plant, and uh, so hence and it also transfers food from the storage parts to the other parts of the plant. So it is a bidirectional movement which happens inside phloem. Unlike xylem, where it is unidirectional and it's only upwards, phloem can be both upwards or downwards. How are water and minerals transported in plants? We have just seen in the previous question that it is the xylem tissue which helps in transport of water and minerals in the plants. So the xylem of root, stem, leaves are all connected to form a channel. The root cells have root hair which take in ions from the soil, and this creates a difference in concentration of ions, because of which water moves from the soil into the root through the process of diffusion. Thereafter, the water and minerals are transported from one cell to another uh, by the process of osmosis. Now, during the day, water is lost in the form of transpiration. So, just like how we uh, suck cold drinks through a straw, the similar thing happens in case of plants, where the transpiration, because of transpiration, there is a loss of water in the higher parts of the plants through the root at the leaves, and this creates a transpirational pull, and this pull becomes a driving force for pulling water upwards in the xylem to the upper parts of the plant. How does food transfer in a plant? So transport of food is known as translocation. It happens using phloem. There is ATP which provides energy that creates an osmotic pressure, and thus food moves from a region of higher concentration to a region of lower concentration. Translocation happens in both the directions. So food produced in the leaf is moved to the other parts of the body, that is an upward to downward movement, and again stored food from the roots or from other storage parts moved to the upper parts of the body, that is a downward to upward movement. Both of these two happen in translocation. Describe the structure and function of nephrons. So nephrons are the structural and functional unit of the excretory system. They are present in the kidneys. So a nephron has a cup-shaped bag at its upper end, which is known as the Bowman's capsule. The lower end has a tube-like structure, which is known as the tubule. The Bowman's capsule contains a bundle of blood capillaries, which is known as the glomerulus. One end of the glomerulus is attached to the renal artery, which brings dirty blood containing urea um, into the glomerulus, and the other end comes out of the Bowman's capsule as blood capillaries, and it surrounds the tubule of the nephron, and finally it joins the renal vein, where it delivers the urea-free blood. So the glomerulus along with the Bowman's capsule is together known as renal corpuscle, and whereas the rest of the nephron is known as the renal tubule. So one end of the tubule is connected with the Bowman's capsule, and the other end of the tubule is connected with the collecting duct for the flow of urine. Let's look at the functioning of the nephron. To understand this, we have to see both the movement of the fluid inside the nephron and also the movement of the blood in the glomerulus and the capillaries. So dirty blood first enters uh, through the renal artery into the glomerulus. We call it dirty because it contains urea and other excretory other molecules to be excreted. Now in the glomerulus, um, because of high pressure, the blood gets filtered, and during this filtration, along with urea, certain useful substances like glucose, amino acids, salts, and a lot of water passes into the Bowman's capsule, and then it enters into the tubule. Now in the tubule, the useful substances like amino acids, salts, etc., they get reabsorbed into the blood through the blood capillaries, and only the waste substances like urea and excess water, etc., are left behind in the tubule. Now this fluid which is left behind in the tubule um, after the reabsorption is known as the urine. Now, the nephron carries the urine into the collecting duct from where it moves to the ureter. And the clean blood without urea moves from the capillaries into the renal vein. Okay. What methods do plants use to get rid of excretory products? The first one is transpiration, through which it gets rid of excess water. Then some of the waste products are stored in vacuoles. Sometimes they are stored in the leaves. So when the leaves fall, the excretory product is lost. Sometimes it is stored in the xylem in the form of gums. Sometimes they are stored in the bark in the form of tannins, resins, and gums. And once the bark is removed, the excretory product is also removed. How is the amount of urine produced regulated? So urine production, as we have seen, happens in the nephrons, and initial glomerular filtrate contains a large amount of fluid and salts. Now, depending on how much water is already available in the body, so the body's environment, there is the antidiuretic hormone ADH, which acts upon the nephrons and helps them to decide how much amount of salts and water needs to be reabsorbed. So reabsorption happens in the tubules, where all the useful substances, excess water, all gets reabsorbed, and then the amount of the urine produced gets regulated. With this, we come to an end of this video, but that's not the end of it. We have only seen the questions which were inside the chapter. Now we still have another video to go through where we are going to look at the questions which were asked in the exercise portion, that is after the chapter. So do subscribe to the channel so that you receive the notification of the second video, which will come soon after in the next couple of days. So thank you, and if you like the video, if you found it useful, please do like, share and comment on the video as well. See you again.